Hi guys, so this is part 2 of some of the iOS SDK demonstrations from Pexip. In my first demo I showed you how you could create a very simple application just using a few lines of code to create a video enabled application. In this second demonstration I'll be going a bit more in depth into some of the things offered by the Pexip SDK and how you can use those to make a slightly richer application. For the benefit of time, what I've done is I've created a simple storyboard application which I'm going to be using for the rest of these demos and upcoming demos, just to save a bit of time with you, so you don't have to watch me filling out boilerplate code and doing basic auto layout stuff. It's pretty much the same as before, except I've added a few more elements and a few more buttons, so I'll just run you through the changes so you can see what state we're in. So again, it's a standard storyboard application. Here we're using Xcode 7, iOS 9 and Swift 2.0, and we'll be taking advantage of some of those features in the demonstration. We have the same sort of address bar where you can enter text for the conference. We have a join button, a share button. We have our standard UI view, which we've made a Pex video view from the module Pexkit. Again, this class and module are very important, otherwise you won't get any video. We've also added a separate UI view, and we'll be using this to show a presentation stream that we're receiving from the MCU. And down the bottom here we've got a table view which we're going to use to populate a roster list, so a list of participants in our conference. And I've set my data source to this view controller for that table view. So over in our view controller, I've already wired up most of the things we need. So again, we have our address bar, our join button, outlet, our conference object, which stores the conference you're talking to, and that's the main point of interaction with the SDK. Here we have our roster list. So this is simply an array of participant objects. Now, a participant object is an encapsulation of a participant in the conference. You can find out what this looks like by actually jumping into the Pexkit by command clicking on your Pexkit import and looking for a class of participant. And here you can find what your participant object looks like in the Pexkit. You can see we have a couple of properties like a URI, a display name, whether that participant is speaking. So you can use this, these properties of a participant to display information about that participant to your users of your app. So yes, there's our roster table view, which we'll be populating with the roster list data source. We also have our standard Pex video view to show our video stream, and there's the presentation view I use, which we're going to show a presentation stream in a later demonstration. I've already wired up the join action, exactly the same thing as before, just using some of the newer Swift 2.0 syntax to make things a bit neater. Exactly the same thing before. We take our address bar text and connect to our conference with a display name of Bob with our URI and no pin. We handle our completion statuses, so once we're in we can go and request a token. Again, all the interactions with the Pexip MCU are handled with a token mechanism. The SDK will take care of refreshing this token and making sure it's valid. So we're going to go ahead and request our token, and then here I'm switching on a status. So previously on the demo I just showed you the positive scenario where we weren't dealing with any potential issues that may arise. Here I'm just showing you a very simple way of dealing with some of the negative scenarios that you can get passed back from your request token. So in this instance, there may be a pin required. Now these are called service errors, and you can find out what your service errors are by going again back into your Pexkit and looking for a enum of service error. And here you can find out all the possible options that we'll be sending back to you. They're pretty self-explanatory, but there's more documentation on docs.pexip.com. And here you can see we're dealing with a pin required service error. So typically what you'd do here is you'd prompt your user to enter a pin, and then you can request your token with this new pin provided by the user. In this instance, we're just going to print out that we need a pin for this conference. So yes, once you have your token and you've got an OK back from the MCU on the SDK, you can then tell the conference that your video view you're going to use to display your video view is this video view. And then we're going to go ahead and escalate media as before. Again, you'll get back a service error which you can inspect and handle appropriately. So the purpose of this first or second demonstration is to talk about event handling. When you talk to an MCU, there is an event stream available from the MCU which will send down events to you, and these are in the form of SSEs or server sent events. So what the SDK will do is it will set up a HTTP connection to the MCU which will stay open, and the MCU will then send events back to you over this connection, which the SDK will interpret, respond to, and then pass up into the application layer for you to play with. And this is all done through delegate functions. So all we need to do this is effectively up here in our definition of our class is we say we want to be a conference delegate. Now all of the conference delegate methods are optional, and you can get a listing of your methods required for this protocol again by looking in your Pexip and looking for class a protocol of conference delegates, and here you can see all the functions you can implement. And today we'll be doing a simple one of a roster update. So we'll be being sent a participant update message which will trigger this roster update, and we'll get a list of participants which will then use that fresh list of participants to update our table view over here so we can see who's in the conference. So let's go and do that. So we've told the view controller you're also implementing the conference delegate protocol. First we need to tell the conference who the delegate is. So once we have our token, we want to do self.conference .delegate is myself. I then want to instantiate the HTTP connection, so I want to say self.conference.listen for events, and if anything goes wrong we do want to fail. And this will just kill the connection, which then you can handle by reinstantiating the connection if you so desire. So what this is doing here is effectively opening up an HTTP connection out to the MCU, and then setting it up so it's listening for events which will then be passed back up into the application. So the event we're interested in is the update, roster update. So here using auto-completion we can see we've got our roster update function. So let's implement this. So initially we're just going to print out the roster list that we get back, just so you can see what's going on. And let's build this application and run it, and hopefully you'll be able to see something coming out. Okay, so let's just join a quick conference. And down here in the bottom right you can see the console window spitting out all of the standard debug. So here we can see all the ICE negotiations going past, and then we'll get through to the SDP, and there you have a connected conference. Don't worry about this broken camera icon. What this is simply saying is the MCU is not receiving video from you, and this is the case because the iPhone simulator doesn't actually send any video. So what you're seeing here is the MCU saying, I don't have a video stream for this guy. And what I've just noticed is we're not actually getting that. I know what I've done. So we set the conference delegate, but it's actually a null. It's still nil. We haven't actually assigned our conference. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut those guys, and I'm going to throw them in here where we're actually assigning our conference down in here. So let's just try that again. So we're going to run that again and join our conference. and we'll see ICE negotiation, SDP negotiation. There we go, and there we go. So what you can see down here, we have these roster list events being sent through, and you can see that we have Bob has this URI, and we also have a second Bob, which is this URI. So what's happened is one of the simulators before wasn't disconnected cleanly, so we actually ended up with two people in our roster list, which isn't a problem. Okay, so now we've got our roster list, we should now do something with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and grab that from our table, for our table. So down here we've got our two functions needed to implement the table view data source protocol. We've got a cell for row index path and a number of rows in section. So what we're going to do is very simply index into the roster list array, pull out a participant, and then create the cell and populate the table. So the first thing we've done here is we've dequeued one of our cells. Now the cell I'm using an identifier of roster cell. So over here in the storyboard over here, you can see that in my attributes for the table view cell, I've called this guy roster cell. Okay, so we've gone and dequeued one of those. We should have a cell. Now I want to actually go and grab the participant. So let's index into this. So we've got our roster list. So let's take the basic, sorry, this is a subtitle cell, so we've got a title and a subtitle. So what we're going to do is take the self.rosterList. We're going to index into this on the index path dot row, which will give us a participant object. And on that object, we want to pull out the, let's use the display name, and then we assign that to cell dot, what's this called, a text label, I think is the big title, dot text. And if we do cell dot detail text label dot text equals self dot roster list index path dot row, and let's take the URI string, so we can see the display name and that person's URI. Okay, so that should hopefully update our cell. Well, it won't unless we actually give it some details. So what we're going to do here is we do self.conference self.rosterList is equal to the roster list that's passed in, and then we're going to tell our roster table view to reload your data, please. Okay, so we've implemented our delegate function, we've assigned our roster list, we're reloading the table view. The table view will then index into the roster list, pulling out the appropriate cells at the right place and showing the display name and the URI. So let's go ahead and run that. And join a conference. Okay, and there you can see we have two participants, Bob and Bob, again from the simulators. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to dial in another endpoint. And there we have live video and some feedback. And we have another participant, my E20 endpoint that I've just dialed in to receive main video. And there we have our event handling in Pexip Demo.